Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to this new Nextatlas webinar. This is the first time that we do this type of webinar to present a document that has become one of the main reports that we do every year. It's the third year now that at the end of the year we uh, look back and look at the confirmations of trends that have been become popular after being detected as early signs of change, as weak signals before, and also to give some of the our bets, our predictions for 2023. I am Erich Giordano. I'm head of business development for Nextatlas. Together with me today, Elena Marinoni is our senior trend researcher.
Hi everyone.
What you will see, as always, is the result of a work of a whole team that is a kind of strange team that we made throughout these years. We are a combination of artificial and human intelligence, combining data scientists on one side that collect data, collect information from social media, analyze them, and select the right data that become relevant insights, and insight strategists that read throughout this data and transform data into insights, into information. This creates a strange combination, the combination of Nextatlas. We are foresight scientists. And we rely on the power of early adopters. This is a very important point. Looking at early adopters is a way, of course, to avoid looking at the noise, avoid a lot of the noise that is on social media. So it's a way to look only at the people and the profiles that can give an anticipation of what will become relevant and mainstream in the next months and years. We do it with our recipe. So discovering weak signals, discovering something that at the beginning is just an early sign of change that maybe regards a small niche of consumers, but then as a growth rate that is relevant and that can become a broader trend and phenomenon. We look at content considering both visual and verbal part of each post, so text and images. And also, every time we discover a new trend and phenomenon, we look at the evolution through time. So it's an always-on prediction because it's something that is always updated and has a lot of data backing up all the forecasts that we do. So let's enter in today's journey. As we said, this webinar has the objective of presenting some of the main trends and phenomena that we consider important for the year to come in the report that will be available for free for everybody at the end of this session. You will see that there are 4 different topics that are presented. Today we will introduce the first 2 and this is what Elena will do in the next some 20 minutes. And of course, as always, you can ask us questions. So there's a Q&A button below. We will find ourselves at the beginning to discuss your questions, to answer to the main ones, and to give you all the coordinates to download the full report. And so, Elena, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Elena. Elena is here. Thank you, Erich, for the introduction. And again, welcome to everyone. Here we go. After an intense, disruptive year to evaluate together what happened in 2022 and more importantly to project into the upcoming new year, trying to illuminate emerging opportunities for both brands and agencies. So this evening you will discover with us some of our bets for you. Basically a collection of emerging trends which will be dominating the future of different industries, the future of consumers' interests. And in the end, we will unveil the 4 watchwords that, in our opinion, will fuel next year's online conversations of early adopters and industry insiders. Here we go with our first data-driven prediction from flexibility to scaling down attempt. And this first prediction is about consumers' transition from a sort of all-encompassing flexibility to a general scaling down attempt, which is of course due to the cost of living crisis that we are all witnessing. Let's have a look at the data related to the validation side of this trend story. Over the past 3 years, as you can see from this timeline, we've been witnessing the stable rise of this need for flexibility. A need for flexibility which actually has taken place across very different fields, ranging from food and beverage to beauty, from, for instance, work-life balance and mobility to retail and traveling. And we might say that the popularity of the concept of flexibility has somehow become more and more appealing and cross-sectorial as the complexity, instability, but also the proliferation of feasible options have become somehow the norm. More precisely, as we can see from this timeline, the need for flexibility has driven the rise in the food and beverage sector for both the so-called intuitive eating trend back in 2020. And as you might already know, intuitive eating is meant as a reaction to every kind of restrictive food culture and diet culture, and later on this need for flexibility has also driven the trend of flexitarianism that more recently has reached the mass. In fact, as you can see from the timeline, 1.5 years later, more than 25% of consumers globally are calling themselves flexitarians nowadays. Another manifestation of the importance of this, let's say, macro trend about flexibility has been in the past the so-called working wonders trend. At Nextatlas, we spotted it back in 2020. Who are the working wonders? They are basically digital nomads living the half-tourist life during and after the pandemic and doing the so-called workations, which is a neologism that results from the convergence of work plus vacation. They consider the working from home experience as basically a huge opportunity to blur the lines between work and travel, somehow alternating between periods of living at home and abroad. So if we look back at the evolution of this trend over time, we might say that expatriates and remote workers can be regarded as a sort of pinnacle of a now much wider community worldwide who have experienced remote working and now simply don't want to renounce to it, eventually pushing the trend of agile working, whose popularity has increased by 35% in online conversations if we compare the third quarter 2022 with the same quarter in 2023. The quest for flexibility has along the way also affected the beauty sector with the rise of the multifunctional beauty trend in late 2021, and it affected the retail field as well, with the trend of flexible, adaptable flagships simultaneously serving as consumer-facing stores, as community hubs, as venues for events, and in case of need, as distribution centers for online shopping. More recently, leisure travel, which is about combining a work trip with an extended vacation before, is one of the latest manifestations of this need for flexibility that, as you can see, has consolidated at the mainstream level, reaching eventually a sort of plateau, which is predicted to remain stable over the past 6 months. Against this context of this macro trend about all-encompassing flexibility that we have kept on monitoring and validating through our data-driven insights and the trend facts at Nextatlas, this second timeline that you can see here shows one of our bets for 2023. A bet which revolves around the concept of reduction and, generally speaking, a cross-sectorial attempt of scaling down. Where does it come from? If we trace back the origin of this stream, we might say that everything started in 2021 with the decluttering trend. Which is, as you know, a sort of lifestyle trend about getting rid of unnecessary things, but also getting rid of pointless thoughts. Subsequently, this stream and this sensibility resonated in the rising debate about the opportunity to review and possibly scale down our city living models, to make them more community-centric, more sustainable, more local. And in this sense, you'll probably remember the debate about the so-called 15 minutes city versus the big smart cities model. Over time, this scaling down attempt, which was already there somehow, has been then further fueled, as we all know, by the cost of living crisis due to the skyrocketing energy and food costs, but it's also been fueled by the spreading of an environmentally friendly sensibility, a new consciousness that is emerging and that is encouraging people to reduce waste and to reduce unnecessary things. With the trend vanishing objects at Nextatlas, we have highlighted that people want more and more to be responsible for their trash. And so, in this sense, biodegradable and compostable solutions are gaining attention and traction among conscious consumers, thus bringing the packaging industry at the forefront. The pursuit of reducing the impact and scaling down is also mirrored at the market level, since brands are adopting more concentrated and waterless product solutions. In this sense, more recently, at the Nextatlas, we have seen that food recipes with fewer ingredients have become the winning formula in this new age of budget-conscious consumption. The term reducitarianism is a term born to name the practice of reducing meat consumption, and is one of the behaviors to watch in 2023. We expect its meaning actually to broaden way beyond the food and beverage field. And for this reason, our first bet for you for 2023 is that the term reduction will be more and more gaining traction across different business sectors. The scaling down attempt, which will be characterizing the next year, can be further supported by the tag cloud that you can see here on the left, with keywords such as polycrisis, shortage, zero waste. The consumer targets more directly involved in this kind of online conversations and posting stuff revolving around reduction are mainly, as we can imagine, eco-conscious people and foodies in particular, mostly millennials and Gen Z, with food and beverage, packaging, retail, beauty as the top impacted industries. We now have a look at a couple of emblematic business cases which show how some brands are already aligning themselves with this emerging scenario, tapping into this opportunity. First, on the left, Waste Reducing Skincare Blueland, which is launching a new refillable facial cleanser. They basically combine cleaning tablets and cleaning powder with reusable and refillable forever bottles to eliminate single-use plastic in everyday beauty routines. And second, on the right, the Barilla passive cooker. Passive cooking is, as we know, a very popular alternative way of cooking pasta. And Barilla developed this smart device that sits on the top of the pot's lid and pairs with the cook's phone to ping them when they need to turn off their stove in order to reduce energy costs and also emissions when cooking a pasta dish. So, what are, let's say, the key takeaways and the insights to action resulting from this emerging scenario? First, brands shall inspire consumers to reduce and reuse whenever possible. Since cutting down consumption from food and beverage to beauty and energy sector is an opportunity to move to more sustainable lifestyles and simultaneously tackling the cost of living crisis. Second, changing the storytelling of reduction is now necessary. The concept of reduction must not be communicated as a renunciation or a penalty, on the contrary, as a choice that demonstrates individual and social responsibility. Moving on to the second topic that we would like to highlight and share with you this evening. Here, the point at issue is a second unexpected transition, which brings hope back to online conversations about climate change. As you might remember, longevity has been one of the watchwords of our previous annual report. And to better understand the drivers pushing the macro trend of longevity, let's take a step backwards and to recap the previous episodes of this story. The convergence of climate change disasters, the pandemic outbreak, the resulting economic instability, the rising inequalities have somehow marked a time of hardship, a time of stress, and have created a widespread perception that we are somehow living in a slow motion apocalypse, quoting William Gibson's words. Over the past 3 years, longevity has become not only a common indicator for measuring health and for measuring happiness, somehow triggering a new form of aspirationality, it has also worked as a coping strategy to face this phase of severe hardship. And it's at this point that longevity, together with endurance, and together with, by extension, resilience and durability, have become popular keywords spreading in all industries. In late 2021, at Nextatlas, we have spotted the rising debate over how much our life and health spans can be extended, and in particular, over what the advantages and disadvantages of extending the average lifespans might be in terms of personal, economical, or social impacts. However, interestingly enough, we have also seen that this future-driven and life-extending mindset doesn't apply only to our personal longevity, it also applies to the life cycles of our consumer goods, with some brands such as Nike and Apple, but not only them, being at the forefront in implementing services, new product features or initiatives to extend the durability of their products. This macro trend about longevity has eventually consolidated, as you can see, and it proves that today's consumers, motivated by improving their footprints, are actually trying to keep their goods longer. In response to this, instead of focusing on obsolescence, brands are asked to design products that are easy to repair, easy to recycle by disassembling or resell, or aesthetically timeless, which means intended to last for years or even decades. Surprisingly enough, the prediction side of this second trend story brings us towards a hopeful tomorrow. It seems that the ever-growing desire to live better and longer is also pushing us to think longer term and to focus on solutions rather than only on the problems, therefore developing a hopeful take on not only the present, but more importantly, the future. The very first weak yet meaningful signal of this hopeful vision of the future emerged with the boom of the solar punk trend, defined as a genre of speculative fiction that focuses on community, technology, renewable energy, and decentralization. Solar punk, as both as a trend and as an aesthetic, provides us with an optimistic vision of the future that imagines a radically different social and economical structure, where nature and technology live in harmony with humankind. The boom in popularity of a second literacy and artistic imagery named home punk, with, by the way, interesting repercussions in the fields of design, architecture, arts, and urban planning, has all the more validated, or we better say accelerated, this first weak signal. In fact, both solar punk and hope punk tell us about a reaction to the many dystopian narratives that have characterized the last 4 years. The idea of the future as a catastrophe in slow motion, somehow punctuated by continuous disasters, is losing a share among early adopters in favor of climate optimism and in favor of the so-called long-termism. Climate optimism and long-termism are movements of thought which, far from denying our current problems and climate change, put again back to the center of the public debate hope and trust in humanity, underlying the importance of joining forces for planning, for getting prepared, for reducing risks. Long-termism, which is basically an ethical stance which gives priority to improving the long-term future, favoring the interests of next generations, therefore embracing a future-proof strategy, is expected, as you can see, to grow in popularity by 6% over the next 6 months, according to our data. These are some more metrics detailing the impact of this emerging scenario. The related tag cloud with the keywords such as long-termism, better future, climate action, hope, and optimism. The targets that are more vocal about these in terms of values, meaning eco-conscious, activists and experimenters, and in terms of socio-demographics, Gen Z and millennials. And these are also the top impacted industries: no profit, advertising, finance and insurance, and education. A couple of case studies to back up this scenario. On the left, as you can see, there is this young lady, Zara Biabani, who is only 23-year-old. She's a young entrepreneur who wants to displace the fast fashion industry by founding the world's first sustainable clothing rental company. She is just out of college and writing a book on the power of climate optimism. Biabani states that climate optimism is just a framework for unlocking the full potentiality of climate solutions that we desperately need. On the right, the University of East Anglia is now running a mindfulness and active hope course, the only one of its kind in the UK. It's basically a 6-weekly session aimed to helping students learn how to transform their eco-anxiety into active hope by leveraging future-proof solutions, long-termism and climate optimism. So what are the insights to action resulting from this scenario? First, embrace the power of positivity. Brands can empower consumers with climate optimism and collective direction for positive change. And then it's human nature maybe to focus on the problem, but it feels so much better to focus altogether on the solutions. And so in their narratives, brands should focus on the things that are going right and on the solutions that are already taking hold. So in conclusion, 2 of the 4 keywords to watch for in 2023 are no doubt reduction and future-proof solutions, whose popularity is expected to increase by 38% and 41% respectively over the next 6 months. But there is much more than this in our annual trend report about confirmations and predictions. So here you can see a spoiler alert to command your curiosity and to prompt you download our report. Since the 2 other watchwords which will dominate the online conversations of early adopters and trendsetters are interoperability and empathy, whose popularity is predicted to increase by 22% and 27% respectively over the next 6 months. So I do hope you have enjoyed this selection of highlights taken from our annual report, and if you want to deep dive into it, if you want to learn more about the other trends that we have not enough time to cover, just scan this QR code and enjoy the full report. Thank you for your attention, and we can now open the Q&A session.
Thank you, Elena, for bringing us throughout these 2 first topics. We have a few questions here that are rising up. I can answer maybe to the first one, which comes from Carl, that asks, how can you tell if a weak signal is really promising for the future? Can you distinguish it from transient phenomena or phenomena that will only continue to interest only a niche? Okay, so you have seen that in all the phenomena and all the curves that we highlighted in this quick presentation, there's always a weak signal as a starting point. Actually, what happens is the algorithms, part of the algorithms of Nextatlas have been trained to detect when something new happens. For example, there's a new concept or a new combination of words that create a concept that have never been considered before and that start rising. Initially, probably the rise is only limited to a small set of posts, a small set of users. So, of course, at the beginning, it's a bit risky to take it as a forecast. But the very important point is that we analyze and we see the evolution for time of this phenomenon. So, when we start and detect a new signal, then we have the possibility of looking how it evolves for time, and so also to understand if this promising curve will become something more stable, if we will regard the same target audience or other audiences, if it will be limited to a market or maybe involving new markets and new industries. So this is the way that we use to detect weak signals and also to, let's say, filter them out from the noise or the fads. Then we have another question. So from Francesca, and maybe you can answer to this one, Elena. Can you give an anticipation about interoperability? So one of the words that were the object of the further sections of the report. Just a few words, maybe. So
Sure. Thank you, Francesca, for your question. Yes, blockchain-based interoperability is set to become an increasingly important topic, not only, let's say, a watchword, as we move towards the advent of the so-called metaverse. And achieving interoperability means that in basically, without compromising security, this will be the point at issue for all the brands, the companies that are going to tap into the opportunities of the metaverse. And so interoperability is basically about allowing users to move in full freedom across different networks, across different virtual worlds, taking their identities and taking their digital assets and digital collectibles with them, and also their digital entitlements. So it might sound as a technical keyword, but we predict that it will more and more redefine online conversations, eventually becoming mainstream.
Another question that rises from Giovanna that says, I am surprised that sustainability-related topics are not losing importance in the current macroeconomic downturn. Is this due to the sample that you are tracking? So if I can start answering to this one, we don't believe that is the sample that we are tracking, because actually, if we see also if we compare also the data with other mainstream tools that are analyzing curves, for example, Google Trends, you can see that there's a curve that is quite stable and it is actually rising in terms of sustainability and sustainability related topics. In Nextatlas, we dedicated a full part of our platform to sustainability, a dedicated focus. And we have seen that actually what happened is that at the beginning of the year, with the war in Ukraine, of course, there's been the beginning of the war, a few months, weeks, I would say, in which the curve started decreasing a bit. So, of course, in that moment, the focus was only on energy, was only on the humanitarian crisis. But then what we have seen is that after, let's say, a kind of stabilization, unfortunately, of the war, what happens is that a macro trend, a mega trend, I would say, something that is already stable and here, as sustainability is stable as before, and even more. So all the brands are, of course, making a lot of investments in terms of sustainability, and so this is a kind of cycle that is going on with consumers and their request of sustainability, and the proposal of brands and companies. Maybe, Elena, we have time for a last question from Andrea, that is asking how the scaling down is expected to impact on the worldwide luxury market. And I believe you can answer, being in Dubai in this moment. You're from the right perspective, maybe, to have a view on point.
Yes, I'm now in the bling bling Dubai, but actually there is much more than luxury in Dubai. It's really one of a kind of observatory to understand how the global markets are evolving. Yes, of course, the scaling down of tech is a macro trend, but it's not going to replace, let's say, all the other trends. The luxury sector and the luxury goods are also a form of investment. And so the two things basically coexist and will keep on coexisting. Actually, we have witnessed the very same thing. If you remember, after the Twin Towers thing back in the days, the luxury market boomed, and basically every time that there are let's say global disruptions, the luxury sector increases and becomes stronger and stronger. And so the two things need to be taken into considerations as the two sides of the same coin, I would say.
Thank you very much, Elena. So we have other questions, but time is over. But as always, we will answer to everybody personally after this session. As we say, you can get the full report for free, and we can also give you another. In the next slide, also you will find the possibility of asking a demo of Nextatlas and its services for the ones of you that still have not worked with us. As always, thank you for your attention and thank you for your time. We hope that you will find other interesting insight in the report. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye bye.